started early this morning. So first step to Benny build is you need everything laid out. The last thing you want to do is run into a problem when you don't have enough wood. That's always a problem. So I've laid out this Telecaster is going to come. The entire guitar is going to come out of this one board. It's 1.5 inch board thick, and so with that thickness we'll be able to get a neck blank and the fretboard out of the thickness of this. Your fretboard, once it's all sanded and final, you really need to get down to about 1/4 inch. That's about what they are when you order from StewMac. This is almost 1/2 inch thickness for my fretboard. I like my neck blanks to be 1 inch, so that once I've done a scarf joint and I've re-leveled and replaned the surface so that it's flat, so that when I join the fretboard and the neck, it's a little more than 1 inch. And right at the thinnest part of the neck is about 0.9 inches, 0.8 inches. So it gives you enough room to play with. We're going to book match the top. And so one of these, one width will be the full top. And so I've picked the most figured spot. And I've picked the side that I want to book match. If you can see it, there's some really nice quilting right here. And then there's these straight grains. And so this is going to be the corner that I'm going to book match. So when I cut this in half, I'll unfold it like a book, and so this side will be mirrored onto the other side, and it's going to give this really neat grain pattern that'll run right up the center of the Telecaster. So for instance, this is probably going to be like the left side. They'll have a knot on either side. It's going to look good. These other two chunks are going to be the left and right back. So this entire guitar is going to be heavily figured. I just need to cut out 2.5 inches of this straight grained area. If you can see this line, it's 2.5 inches. The final neck width at where the neck meets the body, where the fretboard meets the body, is usually about 2.25. A little less than that, depending on what kind of bridge you're using. And so I like to have a neck blank that's at least 2.5 inches wide. It gives you more space at the top with the headstock, so you might not have to add wings. I typically do because of my headstock design. But once I add some Purple Heart in there, this thing's going to be, a little more than 2.5 inches wide, which is tons of room to play with. I like more room to play with than less. So next step is we're going to cut out the neck wood that so I'll cut along this on my bandsaw, and so I'll have this blank, and then I'll flip it on its end and rip it long ways to pull off the fretboard and the neck. And then what we'll do is get into, again, cutting the neck blank into 3 equal sections that will separate with some cuts that we're going to make out of this. I'll probably cut this at about 1/4 inch, and then once I mill it down and thickness it, it'll be about 1/8 of an inch. I'll need 2 of these. They only need to be about 1 inch thick, and so what I pull off from that other side is actually going to be the binding for the fretboard. This is a wood blank from Rockler Woods. I got 2 of these. They were a lot cheaper than I thought they would be, considering that they're Purple Heart. But Purple Heart and Maple, this guitar is going to be absolutely stunning. So we need to get to doing some of the cutting. I'll do as much as I can on a bandsaw, just because there's not a lot of stress involved with the bandsaw. It's got a thin kerf. You can really work it very slowly. It's not like using a table saw where you're terrified about kickback and you're going to cut your finger off or anything. For these cuts, I haven't decided if I'm going to use a Japanese saw or if I'm going to use my circular saw. The kerf on that, I've got very little room to play with. I would love it if this board was about 1 inch longer, and so I'm worried that the width of the saw blade is going to take off too much, but that is so precise, I should be okay. And if I'm not, you know, you can always just scale down. This is actually oversized to begin with, so it's fine. So we just need to get to cutting, and then we'll come back and hopefully have a neck blank glued up. Once you end up, neck blanks, this isn't the neck blank, but it's the same principle. You'll have 2 or 3 different variations of wood. We'll flip it up so that the grain orientation is running parallel to the ground, or perpendicular to the ground, rather. It gives you a much stronger neck. Right now the grains are all running this way. And so we'll cut out some blanks and then we'll flip them on end. And so we want all the grains to be running perpendicular to the ground. And that's so when the wood naturally sort of ebbs, it's going to ebb this way and not this way. And you'll find that with a lot of guitars that are, you know, acoustic guitars, and any guitar where warping is an issue. You always want to have the grains so that they warp, you know, laterally, so you don't get any of this kind of stuff. So it really messes up the action. Everything that has to do with the guitar, remember, is how straight and you know, the error involved between your nut and your bridge and a straight fretboard that follows that straight line that the string makes. So let me run to the bandsaw, and then we'll be back in a second with, you know, the first part of this kit that's going to come out. And, you know, wish me luck that, that I don't screw this up. So this is my makeshift thickness sander. This is a sander from Harbor Freight, and for any aspiring guitar builder, this thing is not that expensive, and it does so many different things. I added a board here, a piece of hardwood, and so I can dial in just how thick I want something to be by changing this angle. And then there's actually a disc sander on this side, which works awesome for winding pickups. You can actually use double-sided tape, put your pickup bobbin right there, plug this into a power strip on the floor, and you can turn it on and off with your foot. But I'm about to thickness these Purple Heart strips that I cut out for the 5-piece laminated neck. I always make sure to have one planed surface before I cut, so that I just have to remove these tooling marks from my bandsaw on the one side. So this guy's just gonna slip right through there as it's on. I'll get good sanded sides, and then I can get back to gluing up this 5-piece neck. All right, so we got everything cut out. It's all rough cut. I did have time to joint the edges, so I'll be able to glue up the neck blank. So this is the 5-piece blank. I've got the pieces of maple that we cut out that have been thicknessed to about 20 millimeters. And then here's my final Purple Heart layers. There's 2 of these. So what we'll end up doing is gluing this together, and it'll look something like this. Once it's glued and ready to go, I'll joint one of the sides and then cut out my scarf joint for my headstock and start working on finishing the neck. Pull off the heel cap. I'll actually get a heel cap. I'll take a piece off the end so that it matches, and then work out my tenon length. Nolan wants a really fat sounding neck pickup. And the way you accomplish that is you sacrifice frets. So a 24 fret guitar isn't going to be able to sound as low and fat as, say, like a 19 fret guitar, because the farther this neck pickup goes towards the headstock, the more low end you get. The opposite's true with the bridge pickup, and so no matter what, that's really where all your tone comes from, is where each one of these is set. And so Nolan wants a nice fat sounding rhythm pickup, and so what we're going to do for that, here's the fretboard, is instead of going to 24 frets, we're probably going to go to like 19 or 20, and that'll give me enough room to kick that neck pickup a little more this way, and so he'll have a really fat sound. This is the fretboard that came off. It's got some really neat straight grains. It's going to be bound in Purple Heart, and so here's my other pieces that I'll use to bind it once we get to that stage. But I'll have to cut the fret slots out, thickness this a little bit more. This will be the side that's going to fit onto the body, so this will be the top. Cut off the neck, the nut slot. Yeah, this is going to be a really pretty fretboard. Here's the body. Here's the book match top. I haven't cut the body out yet, but I will. And I still haven't decided if I'm going to use this side to be the center or this side. If I do this side, I'll have some neat figure, but I'll sacrifice some of the quilting. And if I do it the other way, I'll have a lot more quilting, but then I'll just have this perimeter that might look flat. The body, I don't have a whole lot of room for error, as you can see. You know, once I get these sides jointed, it's going to be pretty close. So I don't know, I'll have to look at it and decide. But this is the top, and then here's our two sides. I was kind of playing around with it. So that this would be the back. We're either going for something like that, where the grains, the straight grains here in the center, sort of, you know, make a pattern that way, or we can do it like this, where the quilting is all around and we've just got this perimeter. So I'll consult with Mr. Nolan. We'll see what his opinion is about it. But I'm going to go ahead and glue these up. When I do a glue up, I always wet the wood before I add the glue. It helps pop the grain. It allows the wood to soak in the glue a little deeper. And I use Titebond. I usually use Titebond 2, but I'm out. So all I've got is Titebond 1. What else is there? I think that's all I'm going to do for today. Tomorrow we'll unclamp the neck, and I'll run, you know, I'll plane another edge, and that the surface that I plane will be the surface that merges with the fretboard. And so it's starting to come together, if you can tell. So I've got my space for my headstock up here, fretboard on top, and then this binding that'll go around my fretboard like this. And so when we're all done, it's going to look really neat. You'll have 4 pieces of Purple Heart, the same thickness, 4 sort of pinstripes going through it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm going to try to get videos out a couple of times a week. And the next few steps is where it really starts to all come together. It doesn't start picking up until later on, once I've done fretting and everything, but it's interesting how quickly a body takes shape. So we'll see how quickly I can get that done. But right now I'm going to focus on the neck. The neck and the fretboard take forever, and there's a lot of precision involved, especially with the relatively small amount of wood that I have here. I'm really pushing the limits of error. I like to side on much thicker than this, but so far it's coming together okay. It's going to be a really pretty guitar. So again, like and subscribe, make some comments, share this stuff with all your friends. I really want this page, this channel to be a useful place for people. When I first started building guitars, there's a lot of people out there that do this, but there's so many little areas that, you know, not everything gets covered online. So that's why I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to cover everything as thoroughly as I can, so that if somebody wants to try to do this, you know, they can see how I cut a scarf joint, how I, you know, put together neck blanks, how I work with the wood to accomplish what I set out to. So I'm going to sign off for today and glue this guy up, And funny story, neighbor's dog came in while I was inside, came in the garage and stole my right crock. And luckily my neighbor found it in their yard. Hallelujah.